guys, my name's Lisa,
And I'm Brittany.
And I'm Tara.
and this is the Imperfect Moms Club. On this week's episode, we will hear from Brittany as she talks about loss and life after loss. Trigger warning for anyone out there who's experienced miscarriage, this episode may be difficult to listen to. Although we want to keep this podcast as truthful as possible, we also understand that some things are harder to hear about than others. Everyone grieves in their own way, and there's no wrong way to process a miscarriage. If you need to pause while listening or skip this episode entirely, that is okay. Be true to yourself.
Well, hey there, everybody. So this episode is going to be a little different because this is our first solo episode. We will be doing a few of these sprinkled throughout the year, and it just gives each of us a chance to share a part of our story. I knew that I wanted to have an episode talking about my miscarriage story. I really want to share my story with you in case you have had a miscarriage. I felt so alone, and I really didn't know how common miscarriage was. So I thought I was weird. I thought there was something wrong with me. And honestly, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was totally blindsided by it. No one really talked about miscarriage when I was pregnant, and that needs to change. It wasn't on my radar, and it's not that it would have made it hurt less necessarily, but I think it might have been a little less shocking for me. If you have a friend who's lost a child, this episode is also for you. I don't want you to tune out because while every miscarriage story is unique, hearing about what happens to the female body and the mind after suffering a loss, that can help you understand why your friend is feeling the way that she is. And I don't have all of the answers, but I can tell you how I felt and what helped me and what ended up hurting me. And lastly, I'm here to share my story, the story of my twins, because although they didn't live very long, they still had a life. And I believe that God created them for a reason, and their life is worth something. And it's worth talking about. So we found out we were pregnant with twins. We had been trying for kids, and honestly, I got pregnant right away. This did not take very long. We got pregnant the first try. I didn't have to take any medication or anything. This just happened naturally. We were so excited. We started shopping. I bought 2 infant carriers. We were looking at cribs. I just dove all in, and I know now they tell you not to do that until you've gone through the first trimester. I didn't know any of that, so I just dove all in, and I already started planning out my nursery, and I decided to go with Thing 1 and Thing 2 from Cat in the Hat from Dr. Seuss. I am a kindergarten teacher, preschool teacher, and I love children's books, so that was my thing. And ever since then, Thing 1 and Thing 2 have had a really special place in my heart. And every time I see a Thing 1 and Thing 2, it just really warms my heart so much because that was supposed to be their nursery. So it's just something sweet that reminds me of them. So I had your typical morning sickness. It wasn't anything terrible. I was waking up a lot in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, one morning, the morning sickness just stopped, which was weird because it just stopped very suddenly. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know to think anything of it. This was my first time being pregnant. And so a couple days later, I went to my doctor appointment where we were going to have an ultrasound. Now, I had already had an ultrasound at a very small doctor's office, and that's where we determined they were twins, and that's the only picture, only ultrasound picture that I have is this very, very, very early ultrasound picture. You can barely see anything, but you can see two little beans, and you can't quite tell if they're in the same sac or not, but you can see that there's twins in there. So I went to my gynecologist, and they were going to do the big ultrasound. And anyway, I wrote a blog post about this the day after it happened. And I'm just going to read that for you because this is more fresh in my mind when I wrote this. And this is what happened. So I'm going to start reading my my entry here. Finally, the time came for me to go and get in the bed. Mike was teaching, so Mom and Dad were able to be in the room with me. We all stared at the screen with anticipation. The small talk and little jokes stopped as soon as we saw both babies on the monitor, and they looked so perfect. The equipment at this office was much better than the one at my last ultrasound, and I could see my babies in more detail on a bigger screen. My heart was filling itself with love, and my mother, who was next to me, started crying with joy at the sight of my twins. And then the doctor grabbed my arm. And at first I thought she was trying to take my pulse. And I thought, well, obviously that's not how you do it. Why does she want my pulse? I'm awake. I'm right here. She gave me a quick look, and then her eyes went right back to the screen. And I knew something was wrong. I knew something was very wrong. I didn't want to hear what she was going to say next. I wanted to stop time right there and just look at my babies. Brittany, she said, I don't see a heartbeat. Okay, so I lost one, but the other one's okay, right? I was so desperate. There isn't a heartbeat for either one. I'm sorry. And my poor mother's tears changed from tears of joy to tears of sadness. And I cried softly too. But I grabbed her arm and I said, Mom, look at me. They're in heaven now, okay? So that's the end of my blog entry for now. So that's what happened in the office. Mike drove to the office and we cried. And then we had to decide what to do next. So I went to the hospital a few days later. I had a D&C. And I remember as they were wheeling me into the room, they were getting me all set up and hooked up and everything. And they were just going to knock me out for it because I didn't want to be awake for that. And I think it's just a hospital procedure that they ask the patient what they're there for, just to make sure they don't like amputate your arm if they're not supposed to. So she asked me in my own words what I was here for. And I said, you're going to take my babies out. And she just patted my shoulder and they gave me the gas and I was out like a light. I remember while I was asleep, I was dreaming about my twins. I didn't dream of them as kids or having them run around or anything like that. I literally dreamed of them in the womb, just their little hearts beating and just floating. And then when I woke up in the recovery room, and the nurse there was so sweet. She was in my room and she was working on the computer, and I was rubbing my stomach after I woke up, and she saw me wake up and she saw me rubbing my stomach, and she's like, oh, are you okay? Do you need some painkillers? And I looked at her just, without very much emotion, and I just said, no, I'm okay. I'm just saying goodbye. And I think that hit her because she didn't leave my room. There were other people in recovery from other surgeries. It was a general recovery area where I was. And she didn't really go and check on anybody else. She kind of just stayed by me. And I thought that was really sweet. Um, I wasn't in the recovery room very long, just long enough to make sure my vitals were okay and I wasn't bleeding excessively or anything like that. And I went home, and it was very strange because obviously this was a very traumatic event. It was very painful emotionally for me, but during my D&C, I'm not exactly sure medically what happened, but they pumped me full of hormones to make sure I didn't crash or something, and the hormones made me happy to the strange point where I was giggling and laughing, and in my head I'm like, why am I laughing? This is weird. I shouldn't be giggling. Everyone else around me is sad and mourning the loss, and I was giggling because these hormones had messed me up. I don't know if they gave me too much. I don't know if they gave me the wrong ones. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional, but I remember that being very odd and very strange, and I think I crashed after that. I really do. So there was a man who ran a funeral home locally, and he was so kind, and he went to the hospital and he took the twins directly from the hospital and he placed them in an urn for us. He didn't charge us a penny, and it was just what we needed. It was the sweetest thing because I didn't really know what to do. So we have them in an urn, and at the time when we lived in Vermont, we buried them. We had some trees in our front yard, and we buried them under one of the trees. I put them in a box, and I had wrapped them up in their baby blanket. I had started working on a baby blanket for them, crocheting a blanket, and I never got to finish that blanket, and I never will. I have it now because we have moved since then, and I couldn't leave them behind. I had to bring them with me. So I have the twins here in Maine now, and I still have that baby blanket, and I will never finish that blanket. I can't. Well, after some time, some severe depression set in. And of course, I saw babies everywhere. That's just how it is, right? I just saw them at the grocery store. I saw them while I was driving my car. I'd see them in a stroller and their mom was walking them. Or I would go to church and there would be someone who's just found out she was pregnant and she'd have this big belly and she was glowing. And I went to a baby shower and there was a girl there who was pregnant, and we had gotten pregnant at the same time. And so that was kind of hard to see her and think that's what I would be like right now. I remember going to Walmart and I was in an aisle, and the next aisle over was a mom and two of her kids. I don't remember how old they were, younger kids. And they weren't being terrible, honestly. They were just acting their age. And I remember her saying, "You kids are a pain in the butt." And I wanted to reach through the aisle on the other side of the aisle and say, I would give anything to have a pain in the butt like you. And now, being a mom myself, I know she probably didn't mean that. You know, my kids now, my two girls that I have now, drive me crazy. But I would never give them up for anything. After the loss that I had, I know how precious they are, and I would never say anything like that about them. Well, I was mad. I was mad at God. My arms felt so empty. I wanted to hold them so bad. and I hated my body. I wanted to like change bodies. I can't do that, but I wanted to. I would stand in the shower forever, and I would just look at my body and just hate it because my body wasn't good enough. My body had failed me, and I had major trust issues with my body now. And I had major trust issues with God now. Why would he do this? Why would he dangle something so wonderful in front of me and then just rip it away? I was so angry. And to rub salt in the wound, I was still having pregnancy symptoms. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I had twins, and so naturally my body was full of hormones and it just took a long time for them to wear off, or what was going on. But I lost my twins in early October. And I stopped having pregnancy symptoms on Christmas Eve. Yeah. So I would be waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom because my body thought I had to pee. I had an aversion to chicken and other foods. I didn't experience necessarily morning sickness, but I had pains, and my body thought I was still pregnant. My body was still trying to grow a baby and was still trying to keep a baby safe in my body. And there was no baby. So that was really hard. It was really hard to wake up every night at 3 in the morning to get up and go to the bathroom when there was no reason for it. There was nothing in my body that would put pressure on my bladder to make me have to go. There was nothing in there. It was empty. And that was really hard. And now I'm going to get into some dark places I went when I was in depression. And if you know me in real life, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I just want you to know these things because it happened to me. And I know on the outside, I was really good at wearing a mask and laughing and telling jokes and doing all of these things at school and at church and with my friends. And I seemed like I was okay, but I was not okay. And I want you to know that because you don't know. You don't know who is suffering, and you don't know where people's heads are. And so it's kind of like a warning just to be careful with what you say around people, because you don't know if they are in a dark place. And if you say something nasty to them, it might just push them over the edge. Well, I became very suicidal. I wasn't getting any help yet. I was self-harming. That was something I used to do when I was a teenager. And I was doing it again. And I would just sit there and I would just stare at the wall for hours. We would try and watch a movie, my husband and I would just sit there and just stare at the wall. And I didn't even care. We would go run errands together, and I would just sit in the car, and we'd get home. We would pull up in the driveway, and I would just sit there. I wouldn't get out. I would just stare at nothing. And so he would just sit there with me, and Mike would just hold my hand and just stare at nothing too, until I was ready to get out. Where we lived by a highway. It's a very busy street. Lots of traffic. Lots of trucks. Lots of semis. And for some odd reason, our mailbox was on the other side of the road. And I would often go and check the mail. And it got to a point where I had to tell my husband, I can't check the mail anymore. Because when I'm on the other side of that street and I see a semi coming down the road, it takes every ounce of me to not throw myself in front of it. It was really dark. It was bad. And finally, I got some help. I got some counseling, and I would go every week. And I went to my doctor, and I got some medication. Now, I did go off of my medication too early. I did not listen to my doctor. Once I started feeling better, I thought, I don't need this medication anymore. I'm fine. I can just stop taking it. And my doctor said, don't do that. If you're going to go off, you need to ease off of it slowly. And I thought I knew better, and I just went off my medication. And that sent me back down into a dark hole. So if you are on any kind of medication, you must consult your doctor. You must listen to your doctor. They went to school longer than you did. They know what they're talking about. Don't just go off your medication. But my medication helped me. My counseling helped me. And honestly, time does help heal. I still miss them every single day. I think about them a lot. Honestly, the first 2 years, I thought about them every single day for 2 years. And now I think about them often. At Christmas time, I like to let my girls pick out Christmas ornaments. And I always pick out 2 identical ornaments to put on the tree, just because they deserve to be part of that tradition too. Time does help heal the pain. It won't take away the pain. I still miss them very much. I still mourn their loss, the loss of what could have been. But because of my faith in God, I know that they're in heaven. I know that God loves children and that God loves me. And in the Bible, it says that little ones like that, they just go straight to heaven. So that gives me comfort, knowing that they never had pain. They never felt hungry. They never had a scratch on their knee. They never got a paper cut. They never got any of that. And that gives me so much hope and so much peace, knowing that they're in heaven now and I will get to see them again one day. Now, a lot of people, to memorialize their babies, they'll name their babies. And I think that's great. I think everyone should grieve in their own way. And there's no right way and there's no wrong way to grieve. You need to do it the way that you need to do it. But I didn't name my babies because, first of all, they were so little. It was too early to tell if they were boys or girls or one of each. I don't know. I have a feeling of what they were, but I don't know. So I didn't name them because of that, but also because I believe that they're in heaven now. I believe that God has given them names. And one day I'll get to hear those names. And so I'm looking forward to that. And that's why I didn't name them. But if you want to name yours, you go for it. You give them the most beautiful name that you can find because they deserve it. If you have a friend who's had a miscarriage, don't say, well, at least you lost them while they were early, or at least they weren't very far along, because people who've lost children in the womb would give anything for just another day with that baby. Don't say, oh, well, you can just try again, because the life that was lost was worth something. That was worth something. And we need to acknowledge that there is a life that is now gone, and there's a pain, and you can't just brush it aside and get a new one like you can buy a new pair of shoes. Well, maybe they would have been born with a deformity. I don't care. I would love that baby to the end of the earth. I would fight for that baby. I would do anything. I don't care if this baby isn't perfect. I don't care if it's born without arms. I would love them. You can't say that to a mother. But what you can do is if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Just go up to them and hug them. Just say, I love you. I don't understand, but I love you. I'm here for you. Bring them a meal. Treat them as if they have the flu. What would you do for someone who had the flu? What would you do for someone who just had major surgery? That's how you treat someone who's just suffered a miscarriage. Don't tell them to get over it. This was a loss. They're learning to trust their bodies again. Their bodies are physically healing. That takes time. And that first 9 months is going to be the worst 9 months of their life. Don't tell them to get over it. Let them grieve the way that they need to grieve, and just love them through it. That is how you help someone who's had a miscarriage. Everyone grieves in their own way. There's no quick way to get over a loss. Your babies were real people, and losing a baby in the womb is so hard because you lost a life that could have been, and you're always going to wonder. Time does help take the edge off of the pain, and I want you to find your own way to remember your babies. If you end up in a dark place, it is okay to ask for help, and I'm begging you to ask for help. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you a person with a heart, and your heart has recently been broken. I've come out of the other side of this story, and I have 2 beautiful little girls right now. I will never forget my twins, but if I had given in on those dark, dark days, I wouldn't be here now with my girls. I wouldn't be running along the beach with them in Maine. I wouldn't be living my best life with my husband and going out on dates and sitting on the couch and watching WandaVision every Friday night. I wouldn't have my 7 chickens. I wouldn't have my dog. I wouldn't be teaching kindergarten. I wouldn't be helping all of these kids and reaching out to all these moms. And I wouldn't be here right now, and I wouldn't be talking to you. If you walk away with anything from this episode, I hope it's that you know that your love for your baby was real. Your pain is valid. Time will help ease the pain, and it's okay to ask for help. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we all get through it in our own time.
Thank you all so much for joining us this week on the Imperfect Moms Club. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to visit our website, theimperfectmomsclub.buzzsprout.com, where you'll be able to subscribe as well as find links to our social media accounts and a list of our episodes. We would also love hearing from you, so feel free to leave us comments on social media or suggestions for future discussion topics. We want this podcast to be as relatable and accessible as possible, so your input would be greatly appreciated.